Welcome to the Enduro Method podcast. Enduro Method is an online strength and conditioning program built for those who ride by those who ride. We are professional coaches dedicated to building the best and most revolutionary off-the-bike training for dirt bikers around. We are offering a special discount for our podcast listeners. Use discount code EMPodcast22 for 50% off your first month. For more information, head to the description of this podcast where you can find the discount code and a link for more information and to sign up.
Welcome to the Enduro Method podcast. Josh here today with special guest Dan Daniels. Dan is the owner-founder of TrexMotoX.com. Kind of got their start, I think, originally making billet throttles. But go ahead and give us a little history.
We really built the product just out of necessity. I have three boys that race motocross, and we would break 3 to 10 throttles a year. They would tip over, a throttle would break. So I looked at the design of the throttles and thought, you know what, there's got to be a better way. And 5 years later, we finally have a product that is pretty badass. We started installing them on our kids' bikes and, developing the product just through testing. And then a lot of people kept asking. They wanted to purchase the throttles from us. And I wasn't really set up for that. We were just manufacturing them to save me money and keep my kids safe. Because whenever that throttle breaks, generally speaking, your throttle is going to be stuck wide open, or it's not operational at all. So if you're out in the woods, you're done. If you're on a racetrack, the throttle sticks, you got bigger problems than that. So that's kind of how it developed. And a year and a half ago, we started selling the throttles, and the response has been pretty remarkable. The performance advantage is massive. Like, people don't think of a throttle as something that is performance related, and people are starting to kind of change their minds. And the more we learn about it, it's such a critical part of riding a motorcycle.
Right.
So you think of what connects you to a motorcycle. It's your feet, and it's your hands, handlebars, and the throttle itself, and the throttle cable. Like, that controls more than half of your experience on a motorcycle. So part of the journey with the throttles, once we got the throttles kind of perfected where they perform really well, the next weakest link was the cable. So we started researching new technologies, and almost every cable on every motorcycle manufactured is using old technology. It's kind of the same thing, the same technology of when you were a kid, riding an XR80. The cable technology on these new bikes is very, very similar. So we found some materials where we can make cables with a special liner, and it reduces the friction 20 to 40% depending on the length of the cable and some of the angles. So that with the throttle, it's really changed a lot of people's experience on a motorcycle, which is super cool.
Yeah. When you first started looking into doing it for the boys, where did you even start?
Well, so, obviously I looked at everything that was on the market, and we were on little bikes, Cobra 50s, and they have it's a plastic throttle assembly, and then we also had some KTM 50s and 65s, and they're a little bit better. I believe it's a domino housing, but it's made out of cast aluminum, and that cast aluminum is what was really failing. So I knew what not to do and products not to use. And then, I started looking at other companies, and, there's so many different throttle designs. our primary goal was strength and safety. So it kind of drew us directly into billet aluminum. It's the strongest, lightest material. And with modern day CNC machinery, it's something that can be manufactured. And the cost of some of those machines has come down, and the technology to do the designs is out there. So that's the route that we took. Once we started with our first throttle assembly, it worked pretty good, but we had issues keeping it together. The screws would vibrate loose. The tolerances weren't where they needed to be, so we started there, and within the first year we went through 5 different designs.
Wow.
And then we settled on a design that was pretty bomber and worked really well. And then we came out with a new design the beginning of this year that is even a step better. It's stronger, moisture stays out of it, smoother, the tolerances are tighter. We have some new internal low friction materials. So everything that we develop has just taken so much time in testing, and we're a small company, so we make changes very quickly.
Yeah.
And that's a huge advantage to us, because if I see an issue today, then I'm starting to make changes tonight when I should be sleeping. And then, I'm on the computer in the morning, and, we're going down the road of making the changes to make it better.
Yeah. What were some of the biggest evolutions from when you started to now?
Well, the biggest evolution is probably the tolerances. So the tolerances and the design of the throttle tube and the throttle cam itself.
Uh-huh.
When you're dealing with metal like billet aluminum, temperature changes, they change the tolerances. A lot of times we ride, you first get going, it's 32 degrees in the morning in the mountains, and then by the end of the day it might be 85. So that's one of the things you have to think about. And through testing we determined what tolerance would satisfy every extreme environment. And then the throttle tube itself, which we started out with like a 2-piece throttle tube because it's easier and less expensive to manufacture.
Mm-hmm.
And generally works fine. But we had some failures just because you have 2 separate attachment points. And so then we spent a lot of time trying to develop a single piece tube, and it's really time consuming and expensive. But at the end of the day, we have a product that, man, you just can't break it. It's absolutely bomber.
Yeah.
So once we got those systems put together, we started looking at the performance. And with the throttle tube, you're looking at the throw of the cam, mm-hmm. which controls how quickly your throttle body, your carburetor opens and closes. And we really focused a lot of attention on that. And that's also a huge part of why this system works so well, is you don't have to regrip the throttle when you're riding it. And for 95% of all the riders, like, our standard profile works really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
So, those are some of the biggest challenging points.
Yeah. And then from just getting your name out there and getting it known, seems like it was kind of a grassroots deal. You're putting it on the boys' bikes, going to races. People were seeing it.
Yeah. We race nationally across the nation motocross. So we travel a lot. In a normal year, we're putting 40 to 50,000 miles in our truck going to races, which it sounds absurd, but that's where we are.
Yeah.
So we meet a lot of people, and we're always competing at a fairly high level, and we have relationships with some of the top kids in motocross, and a lot of those top athletes have helped us develop a lot of the product. So, we would generally come up with a couple of prototypes, ship them off to some of these kids that are putting in 4 to 6 hours a day riding, and we just let them beat the hell out of it and let us know what they think, and if we need to make changes, we make changes. So the development actually happened really quickly as far as getting it dialed in to the the throttle cam where we needed it, some of the tolerances, and once we got that dialed in, then it was just getting the product out there to other racers, and the performance that we offered, the advantage was pretty substantial. So, like when we go to Loretta Lynn's is the biggest race today, and there's 42 kids in each class on the gate. Over 90% of those kids all have a Trex throttle and cable on their motorbike, which is really, really cool.
Right.
So that's kind of where it started, and that's where the development has taken us. Mm-hmm. And we're expanding the market into bigger bikes, and just kind of going along the same lines with development and testing. And we have some of the top level pros and amateur enduros that are testing some stuff for us right now for enduro specific GNCC racing and some extreme enduro stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome. What were some of the biggest things that it helped with for them?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. The first one is safety. So we developed a cable that would thread directly onto the carburetor cap, and on these small motorcycles, the cable just sits. The stock cable just sits in a little cup on top of the carburetor.
Huh.
When a kid crashes, and if there's a little bit of slack in that cable, that's going to pop out of the cup and the throttle's stuck wide open. That's happened to, I'll bet, 80 to 90% of every 50cc rider that's owned a Cobra or a KTM motorcycle. So we developed a cable that's a low friction cable, so it's way less resistance, but it threads directly into the cap. So it's not possible for that cable to pop out of the top of the carburetor.
Right.
So that, number one, as a parent, that makes the product worth it. Because
right.
I know with my kids, it's happened to every single one of my kids. I've seen my one boy, Max, he jumped over a berm and was probably in the air for 30 feet. And almost took out a fence just because his throttle stuck and the cable popped out.
Holy smokes.
So, that kind of gets your attention. So that's probably the biggest safety / performance enhancer for our product on the really small bikes. But the resistance when you twist the throttle, if you think of these kids, a lot of them have micro grips, so they're a little smaller than the standard grip. So it takes a lot more leverage to twist the throttle. Mm-hmm. And if you can reduce that amount of force by 20 to 40%, all of a sudden these kids aren't getting arm pump. They have better throttle control. They can ride longer, and it makes a huge difference in their performance. The other thing with the little bikes, they have a automatic clutch, and a lot of these kids will blip the throttle because they don't understand throttle control, and when the cable's super stiff and their arm's tired, they just go open, close, so it just goes blah, 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 and it's really hard on the bike. And with our system, it makes it easier for them so they don't have to do that. Right. So that's a huge difference. But and then also the dads. So a dad with kids on motorcycles, you're always messing with the damn throttle assembly. It's never working right because these kids tip over. An adult might tip over once a day. Kids tip over 10 times an hour. Like they are always tipping that bike over, and it's always the throttle side. So it's just packing dirt inside the throttle assembly. And with our one-piece tube, the end of it is capped, so dirt cannot get in there. So you put the throttle and cable on, and you don't mess with it as long as you own the bike. Like, it really changes the lives of the dads and moms that put these things on there, because you really do spend a lot of time fiddling with that. So with kids, and I've got to say, like, the kids they're probably the best demographic to test the durability of things. Right. They destroy everything they own. Like, it's unreal how hard they are on things. So that was a benefit also.
Nice. And then as you're going into more big bike, like hard enduro world, what's it been like getting product out there?
Yeah, so the one thing we've learned is testing is so important. So we started building some stuff for Sherco's about a year ago, and so we've had product out being tested. We've got a rider in the GNCC, races GNCC Pro, and they've helped us do a lot of testing on products. So I'll build prototypes, send it to them, and they'll use it, or sometimes not use it because it doesn't work, and then we'll modify it until it's something that they can use, and then they just put a ton of time on it. So we're slowly getting into that just because of the development time. When we release it, we want it to be perfect. So part of that is developing a cable that's going to work with each motorcycle. And some of the throttle body motorcycles, their cable systems are a little different. So we're just trying to develop things for every single motorcycle that might be used off-road, and a lot of those have the throttle body injection system. So it's kind of a slow road, but we've done a ton of development, and we've been working with one of the top pro teams, and we're working on some special throttle cam profiles that specifically for endurocross, and a few other things. So all of that's in testing, and we'll have everything on the market by next year, and possibly sooner. So it is a slow road because it has to be perfect, or we're not going to release it.
Right. Yeah. What was it? 2 weeks ago or so, you came over and put one on my T300.
Yeah. So we've really been trying to develop a cable for the T300, the KTM, off-road enduro bikes, and so I built a prototype cable, and we put it on your bike, and so you've been testing that for a couple of weeks, and we'll get your feedback on it, and then we'll make whatever changes we need. But that's kind of how we do things.
Yeah. I mean, my experience has been all pluses. There's nothing that's been downside. I've had probably 2 or 3 legit good hard enduro training days on it, and then a couple long rides, 6-7 hours, just more single track flowy stuff. A couple practice days in between, and it definitely took a little bit with the cam to get used to the shorter pull, but after I did, it was way better, and I actually would have a hard time going back probably. It's super smooth, it's very consistent. I did fall off a log, gave it a good test upside down in a creek, probably a good 10 feet, and it didn't break, and it hit something because it moved, so it hit it hard. I don't know what, but it's been really cool. I've been stoked. It's probably honestly not something I would have thought of doing without you, like, hey, can I put this on your bike? But I'm really glad I did, and now knowing, I'll probably continue using them forever.
Yeah, once what we find is once somebody has the throttle and the cable on their bike, it takes them a day to get used to it, but they will never go back. And that is just such an important part of our business. Like, all of our business is return customers and word of mouth. And we have some of these throttles out there that have over 2,000 hours ride time on them. And we have some cables that have close to that.
Wow. Which
is crazy, but it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. And I mean, some of the, I was thinking back, Dane had at Grinding Stone last year, she was buried that thing in sand a couple times, and at one point the throttle quit. It was sticking entirely wide open.
Yeah,
couldn't do it, and she broke the cast iron, the stock housing.
Yeah, so
that was screwed up. But then it was just a nightmare trying to, on the side of the race while you're already smoked, and then you're trying to get sand out of your throttle and down the cables and everything else. And one of the complaints I've always, silently held, but with that double throttle or cable setup, if you crank the bars, for me it was to the right, it would bind up those cables enough that throttle will stick.
Yeah.
Turn to the left, lock, you're fine. And I would have to, spend so much time trying to clean it and lube it and get it good to go, just so when it's cranked to the right, it's not hanging up on me.
Right.
And with this, there's no issue with that whatsoever.
Yeah, and it's just, they're super easy to work on and take apart and diagnose.
Right.
Like, you can do that on the trail with an Allen head. Like, you can take the entire thing apart and you're not going to have pieces fly out.
Right.
It's super intuitive and easy to work on. But the new bikes are really, like KTM, Gas, Husqvarna. They've probably given us more business for 125 and up motorcycles in the last year. We're seeing a huge shift because their existing cable system is not that great. And people have a hard time working on them. They're really expensive, and they just don't work well. So that's something that has helped us out.
Yeah.
But our stuff is so simple, super simple.
Right.
In fact, like the cable, the liner and the cable itself is 20th century technology. The way it's assembled is really old school technology. Like, these things, like, it's lead soldered on the end of these cables. Like, we determined for strength, the strongest was old school lead solder. And it's so much stronger than any of the current technology as far as the knobs on the end of them. So That's a big failure point in cables. But anyway, it's testing, and guys like you that are willing to, put something that I just built in my garage on your motorcycle. And then also on the TBI bikes, we're doing mostly single cable conversions. So
Right.
we're getting away of the push cable. You just have one cable. It's a pole cable, and that alone reduces your friction almost 20%.
Right.
And it's one less thing to fail.
Yeah. No, it's been noticeable. I mean, I was a little worried with the shorter pull or throw or cam. When doing some, really technical slow stuff, uphill, moving the front tire around. But it was actually better. Like, I was blown away. And the day that I was out there, it was super wet. I mean, it was way slippery. And I had no issues with throttle control. And I know, obviously most of that's coming through the clutch, but it's still a big component, right?
Yeah.
And the hardest part was actually single track, like regular riding, where I was a little bit jumpy in the beginning just because it's quicker. And when you're not clutching, it's just more, response to the rear tire immediately. But within, I don't know, half hour, you're kind of sorted out and good to go.
Well, one of the biggest parts of being on a motorcycle is your body positioning, right? So if you're in your standard riding position and you're moving your arm to get your throttle position from 0 to full throttle, that's changing your body position.
Right.
So a quicker throttle, although it's not the best in every situation, but a majority of the time, you can control the bike better. Your body you're not making big body changes. You're just making small changes, and you don't have to re-grip the throttle. And that's huge. Like, there's no reason, to have to move that much to go from 0 to full throttle.
Right.
So making the movement smaller, I think, is a benefit.
Yeah. It's been really cool to use. So what else are you offering? I wish we had a video. Sorry, we don't, so you could see this stuff. But maybe talk us through some of the other stuff you're looking to work on.
We're kind of specializing in billet parts, and it's all performance-based, race-oriented. So we're pretty hardcore racers, and if there's an advantage anywhere that we can see, then we take advantage of it. And if there's a gray area in the rule book, we figure it out. And if there's a performance advantage, then we try to build something that'll suit the need. So, we've got some triple clamps that we're starting to manufacture. We had a test project and had some for the national race at Loretta Lynn's, and the response for those was unreal. So we're starting to make some triple clamps and bar mounts. We have some foot pegs, and that's kind of been challenging because they were handmade. They look cool, they work great, but the design of something that's handmade, it's probably like an 80% success rate with them fitting perfectly. So we're probably not going to continue hand making foot pegs, but we are working on some billet designs with it's going to be a pretty revolutionary way to change the actual the pegs, instead of having thread-in Allen heads or something like that. With a billet peg, we have a new design that is going to allow you to change those really quickly and easily, and still have the lightweight and the strength of billet, and they'll look pretty cool. So that's something that's still in the design phase, but that'll be coming down the road. We make a handful of sprockets and some other small specialty things. Like there's a list of products that we're going to develop that is really long. And we're starting to put a little more time into the development of those things. So there's going to be some pretty cool stuff coming out in the next year.
Nice.
And it's going to be cool. So for now, though, the throttles, we're really going to put a lot of time into the off-road GNCC market, just because our throttle assemblies are perfect for that market. You can't break them. You can't get mud and dirt in there. You hit a tree going 50 miles an hour. You don't have to worry about your throttle. So we're going to have a lot more products in that market, and that'll be just coming out over the next year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm stoked. I'm glad I was able to get one on and test it and use it and continue to use it. And looking forward to seeing what else you come out with. Maybe let folks know where they can find this stuff, get a hold of you, etc.
Yeah, so just look on our website, trexmotox.com, so trexmotox.com, and that is our website. Has a lot of information on there. We also have a new website that's coming out that's going to be way more intuitive and a little more specific for the enduro market, not just motocross. So it'll be easier to navigate, and we're going to have a lot more products for the enduro market.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to it, and thanks for coming on and telling us about it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Josh.